Hey everybody, it's Kimberly. So before I get started on this explanation of my book that many people have been messaging me about through Facebook, Instagram, email, I want to give a disclaimer. If you are somebody who is sensitive to hearing about uh, subjects such as suicide, depression, um, uh, parental abandonment, sexual assault, child abuse, anything like that, please stop this video. I do not want to put anybody in any way, shape, or form of harm, whether it's their mental stability or physical stability. But I feel like it's important for me to share the story behind my book, since so many of you have been asking about that. And so here we go. So first of all, I grew up in a pretty non-conventional family. My grandparents raised my brother, sister, and I from the time I was 10. We had been living with my mother. My father had been completely out of the picture. I had not met him. I think I was like in sixth grade when I first met him. And we didn't even believe, or maybe it was fourth grade, something like that. I just remember my brother did not believe he was who he said he was and asked to see his driver's license. So we just, my grandparents gave us the best home that possible, with a lot of love, a lot of security, clean clothes, food on the table. Also, rules, grounding, all that kind of stuff that kids don't like. But I'm so grateful that they took on that added responsibility, and because they loved us enough to do that. So grew up, like I said, in a very small town where everybody knew everybody. Most people were related. Played volleyball during grade school, high school. When I was in high school, I started really experiencing what I now know as depression and anxiety. It was never talked about. Mental health is never talked about enough. Thankfully, it's talked about more today than ever, but we still have a long ways to go. But when I was 16, I was just overcome with depression, anxiety, and these negative feelings that I had no idea where they were coming from, why they were there. Part of it was I kept having these same nightmares over and over and over again. And I can remember having these nightmares at as early as 7, 8 years old. And the nightmare was that I was sleeping, I was in bed, and my bedroom door was actually a steel door. And my grandpa, my uncles, all the important men in my life who had just been complete positive role models in my life were trying to get in through the door to save me because I was being attacked. And they were never able to get through that steel door. And so just when the door was about to open is when I would wake up. I would wake up, my heart would be racing, I would be sweating, I would be crying. I would feel like it had really, truly happened. When you have a nightmare, most of the time you wake up, you're like, oh, that was a bad nightmare. For me, these nightmares, they felt so real. I later, much later in my life, found out that they were actually night terrors. Sometimes 2-year-olds get them. Or if you've suffered any type of trauma, you might experience them through PTSD. That might be one of those symptoms that you have. But I didn't know this. I just thought they were bad nightmares. So I never really talked much about them. When I was 16, I attempted suicide and was nearly successful. I ended up in the hospital literally minutes before it would have been successful. Had some high school friends not driven by, saw me and noticed something wasn't right, and ended up calling the 911, getting the EMTs there, taking me to the hospital. I spent about a week in the hospital, where 3.5 days were spent in the ICU. I was very, very fortunate. Don't recommend it. What I know now that I did not know then, suicide is not the answer. It is never the answer. And I can't stress that enough. But at that point, I was so hurting so bad. I did not know what to do with that. I did not trust that I had people I could talk to. I did not. Part of that hurt was coming from things that I was doing, choices I was making. Part of that hurt was feeling abandoned by my parents and feeling unlovable. Even though my grandparents, they showered us with love, I just felt very unlovable. Not getting along with my siblings at the time was very painful. And like I said, some of this pain I brought on myself. Some of it was inflicted on me by others' choices. I, kind of just went through life for the next few years, not really talking about it, just kind of suffering a little bit in silence. I think people could see that there wasn't something quite right, but we didn't talk about it. People just they talked about it of what you did, but they don't talk about the root of it, and that really is an epidemic in our country today. When I was later on in high school, it's like 18, 19, graduating high school, early college years, I had a lot of people notice that my faith was important to me and was always like, you should be a sister, or you should be a nun, you should do this. And so I ended up going into the religious life. And for many years, going through formation and things, I would have these nightmares. And one night it was so bad that the 3 sisters I was living with ended up waking them up in the middle of the night. They had a hard time waking me up. One of them, who was in her 80s, she was holding my feet down because I was thrashing so bad. I ended up kicking her in the face. Unbeknownst to me, I had no idea what I was doing. And I feel horrible that I did that, but I had no idea. Bless their hearts, those 3 sisters that I lived with were so compassionate, so understanding. They just loved me through it. They prayed me through it. They helped. If I wanted to talk, they were there to listen, which honestly, I did not talk much about it. It wasn't until a few months later after that, I started really putting some pieces together. I started having these flashbacks and these memories of being sexually assaulted between the ages of about 4 and 7. And I won't go into the gruesome details of that, but it was something that started making other things in my life make sense. I was always feeling very uneasy going out at night. Don't know why. I was never I never went out after dark. When I was out after dark, I was very uneasy. which is nothing to my knowledge at that moment told me anything, like nothing had happened at night or at dark. But I just felt that uneasiness. So while I was in religious life, the pieces started coming together, and I started like really doing a lot of journaling. Now, I had always journaled off and on throughout high school and when I went to junior college and when I lived on my own, I'd always journal a little bit. And, I found a lot of peace in that. I found a lot of solace in that. I had come home one Christmas and I went to see my grandma and went to see my family, and then spent some really good quality time with a couple that have been like parents to me. They've loved me. They've scolded me. They have given me their opinion. They've helped me financially. They've helped me emotionally. Spiritually, they've helped me. So I had told Rick about this. Well, first I told Cheryl, and then I told Rick. And Rick has always been what's the word I want? Not a supporter, but he's always helped with giving presentations and fight against child abuse and stuff like that. And they were all just very loving and supportive and let me talk and stuff. And they were really the only ones that I had told about this. So when I went back to community, I just tried to push everything down, pretend it never happened, go on with my life, yada, yada, yada. And as time would have it, I would have more time in prayer, more time in self-reflection, spiritual direction, counseling. Then I ended up leaving community. I ended up leaving the religious order that I had spent the last 5 years with. And I got an apartment. I had a job that I loved at this time. But I was my depression, my anxiety, it was growing as the days were going on. It was getting to the point where I would double, triple, quadruple check the locks on my windows of my apartment, the locks on my door. I had a deadbolt. I had, regular lock, a deadbolt, and a chain lock. And I would check it 3, 4, 5 times a night. I would sleep with shoes on in case I had to get away real fast. I would sleep with a butcher knife under my pillow in case I needed it for protection. How I didn't hurt myself in my sleep is really truly a miracle. But I just feel like that was something that I needed to do to make myself feel safe. Now, did I tell anybody I was doing this? No. Again, like I said before, mental health is mental illness, child abuse, violence, sexual assault. Those things are not talked about openly like they should be. And as far as my friends knew, they thought I was doing fine. I had a job I loved. I was, involved in my parish, doing all these things, but I never went out at night. I made sure I was home before it got dark. If there was something going on at night, I would make an excuse that I couldn't go because I was just that afraid. So one Sunday, it had gotten so bad that I did not go to church, which is very unusual for me. The thought of suicide ran so deep in my brain and in my heart at that time that I just was going to do anything and everything I could to stop that pain. However, I also knew that that was going to cause other people pain. So I had written all these letters to my family, to my friends, and had apologized, told them I love them, but I couldn't do it anymore. I could not go on with my life anymore. And throughout that day, I received 3 phone calls. I received 3 very special women in my life who have been mother figures to me over the last 20 plus years. Each called me, not knowing that the other was calling. One of them does not like to talk on the phone. So for when she calls, like I take the time to listen to, talk to her or whatever. We talked for an hour. It was very surface level, I would say. She told me that there was a song at church that was being played that made her think of me. And she just couldn't get me out of her head. And so she wanted to call and see how I was doing. Of course, I lied to her, told her everything was fine. I told her I was just enjoying my Sunday, going on, I don't know if I told her I was reading or writing or whatever, but I made her believe that everything was okay. Next phone call, same thing. Told her everything was fine. However, Cheryl was a little bit more in tune. She knew, she could hear in my voice I was lying, or maybe not really lying, but just like trying not to tell her. Then my friend Dee calls, and her first question to me was, "Did you go to Mass today?" Now, why would she ask that unless she sensed something? And I just yelled at her and I said, "No, and I don't care." And we hung up. Well, that started the ball rolling. Okay, these 3 women love me like I'm their daughter. They were not going to allow anything to happen. They knew my history. They knew that something needed to be done. So they kind of had a little intervention. They got each other around calling, and ended up, I went to one of their houses for a couple days, and sat around, did a lot of crying, did a lot of talking. Rick knew right away that I needed to get into some counseling, some serious counseling, and not just regular counseling but I need to be in some specialized counseling. So he hooked me up with the Center for Prevention of Abuse in Peoria. And, I started going. The only appointment that this one counselor had, 5:30 in the morning. And so, in the beginning, I just kind of went to pacify everybody else. I didn't say a whole lot in those first several weeks of sessions, but slowly I started to trust Marianne and started to open up a little bit. And she really was good for me. She really asked some really hard questions. She never let me off the hook. She knew somehow when I didn't want to talk. She knew when I needed to talk. She helped me learn some tools for coping. She helped me to come to the realization and the belief, because those are completely different things, that the abuse was not my fault. To the point that I can honestly say today that I have forgiven the person who has abused me. I have forgiven 100% the person who allowed that abuse to take place. And I can talk about it now. A year ago, 2 years ago, that was not the case. I would completely shut down. When other people would talk about experiences or they knew somebody this or that, it completely shut down. I'd walk out of the room. It was very uncomfortable. Now it's not like I just go out there and talk about it all the time, but I'm willing to open up to people and listen to others and share my experiences. Through all of this, though, I continued to journal. I continued to write. That was really the only thing that really were my private thoughts that I could, just get out of my head, that helped make me feel better. Now, all my friends and family, they were there for me. They supported me. They helped me, but it was really just me regurgitating it on paper that was the most helpful. And I like to write so much that sometimes I would write poems for friends, family, my godchildren, for special occasions, maybe their birthday, their baptism, their anniversary, whatever. Those would be things I would gift them. But for the most part, my writing was very private to me. Last summer, I woke up one day and I had this title in my head: From Death to New Life, the Transformation of a Soul. Now, I had no idea what that meant. I've had people tell me for years, literally years, say, you need to write a book. And I had absolutely no desire to do that. I did not want to share my life publicly like this. I didn't think people would want to read it. I really was just very self-absorbed, I would say, and very private in that manner. Now, I do have a small group of close-knit friends that know every intimate detail of my journey. But, outside of that, I did not want the world to know. I did not want my grandmother to read the intimate details. I did not want, my godchildren to read those, or other children, young adults who are in my life that mean the world to me, to know those details. However, God had another thing in mind for me. So last summer, I moved into a new place. I had this box that I had labeled Journals to Burn. They were all my journals dating back to high school. Now, I graduated in 1996. So those are a lot of journals. And I was just going to have a bonfire, burn them. I did not want to go back and read them. I did not want to experience the heartache that I knew was in those pages. I just didn't. I didn't think I was strong enough to be able to do that. I didn't think that I was brave enough to do that. So I had talked to my former counselor and just said, hey, I have all these journals. I'm going to burn them. Excuse me. And she says to me, I think you need to read them. It's like, no. I do not want to read them. I do not want to know what's in them. I don't want to go back to that place. And she says, I think you need to read them. You're stronger. You have a support system in place. Just don't read them all in one night. So it took me a while. It took me a couple of weeks to get the courage to be able to do that. And so I would do one journal a night. And what I found in those journals, now some things I'm like, oh, I wonder what that was about. I wonder what I was thinking there. But I found a whole bunch of poetry and prayers that I had written. And I was like, wow, that's really good. I don't remember writing that. Did somebody else get into my journals? But I knew they were mine because there was no way that anybody else had been Um, so I decided I was just going to rip those out, and then I would burn the journals. And then every Friday after work, I would come home, have a bonfire, have a glass of wine, and watch them go up in smoke. And I'm telling you, it was the best thing I ever did for myself. I felt a huge, huge weight lifted off my shoulder doing that. And so after I got done going through all the journals, I had a stack of papers that were all these poems and prayers and things. And so I was like, well, I think I'll just type these up and have them digitally so I don't have to worry about having all this paper lying around. And then they're still private because people can't get into my Google Drive or my external hard drive or whatever. And so did that. And then again, the title From Death to New Life, the Transformation of the Soul kept coming forth again. This time it was very, very strong. Could not go a day without thinking about it. I'm like, what does this mean? And so I was talking to one of my very, very best friends. And Janine says to me, I think it's time to write your book. So I kind of laughed, and then somebody else very close to me was in the dying process. And as a family, we were praying the Divine Mercy Chaplet. And I had this huge revelation. And then for those of you who don't know about the Divine Mercy, the quote that goes with it is, Jesus, I trust in you. If you know me and you know my faith is important to me, I had to do it. I had to rely on that quote, Jesus, I trust in you. And there was some other things that were going on at the time. But I ended up asking a friend if she would read through the poems and help me put these together. Do, editing, spell check, all that. Asked a couple other friends if they would help me organize them in a way that kind of tells my life story without telling my life story. And my sole purpose for this was that this was going to be my Christmas present to my friends and family. As a thank you for all that they have done for me over the course of the last 30 plus years or more. I was not going to sell it. I was not going to do anything with it. I just wanted to get it into their hands. So then I talked to a friend of mine from high school who's a phenomenal artist, teaches art, does art, like just phenomenal. And I said to him, I would like to see if you could design a cover to the book. So talked to him, gave him some ideas. And within just a few hours, he came up with the design of the book. There we go. So you see, there's a butterfly here. And it's got the Paschal Mystery symbol in the wing up top. And it's got wheat stalks in the bottom. And then this is the teal ribbon for sexual assault awareness. And we have the light streaming down on it. So it's from darkness to light. And that, I literally broke down and cried when I saw it, when he sent it to me. So I was just going to read about the cover here for you. It says, the cover design is very symbolic of my life's journey. The darkness is symbolic of the many dark times I've experienced throughout my life, from sexual abuse, parental abandonment, a suicide attempt, depression, loss of jobs, loss of friendships, moves, and more. The teal cocoon is made of a ribbon that represents represents the ribbon of sexual assault awareness survival ribbon. Through many years of therapy, I have grown to not be ashamed of the experiences I had because it was not my fault. So even though I do not talk much about it, I also do not hide from it. The butterfly represents the transformation I have gone through as I dealt with the pain of remembering the abuse at the hands of my mother's boyfriend, and it is flying towards the light, which represents the light of Christ in my life. Christ always sheds his light and love into the darkness, often through love and acceptance of others. In the Gospel of John, Jesus says that unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains just a grain of wheat. But if it dies, it produces much fruit, which means that as followers of Jesus, we must die to sin and be reborn to eternal life. On the wings of the butterfly, there is a Paschal mystery symbol, as well as stalks of wheat. The Paschal mystery symbol, which is the church's name for the fundamental basis of Christianity, refers to the life, death, and resurrection and transformation of our Lord Jesus Christ. We must die to our struggles in life so we can rise and be transformed to be the best version of ourselves in the name of Christ. So, there you go. So that's how I came up with the cover. Now, I gave about 50 copies of this book for Christmas. Every single person who received this book was literally blown away. The response that I received from this was absolutely mind-blowing. And therefore, I went on, through the encouragement of my friends, through the financial help of my friends, decided to get this published for sale, which I am so grateful for. The only thing is that from the sales of this book, the proceeds benefit the Center for Prevention of Abuse in Peoria, Illinois, because they do not charge a single penny for their services. Not only do they provide services for sexual assault survivors, they provide services for alcoholism, elder abuse, bullies. They go into schools and do bully prevention programs for students, which as a teacher, I think that's amazing. They provide shelter for domestic violence, women and children. They do so much good. I can't even tell you how much good they do in our communities throughout Illinois. They receive very little funding other than through donations. So that's why it's really important for me to be able to give back, because I received counseling services from them for about 10 years. And I never had to pay a single penny. So that's kind of my story. That's kind of why I wrote the book. There's, 180 some poems in here. There's photos in here of my life from when I was really little to just last year when I was home during shutdown and trying to engage my students by dressing up. Pictures of family and friends and I together. So if you are at all interested in purchasing my book, you may go on to Amazon. It is purchased there. It is also being sold at LeGrand Miller Company in Peoria, a Catholic bookstore. And there will be a book signing on June 12th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. June 12th, 2021, that is. And so I hope that you've gotten a little glimpse of my journey. I hope that you can see how, I've come out of that darkness. I know the tools now, and that suicide is not an answer. Okay. If you are feeling suicidal, please reach out to me. I can help get you resources. I will listen to you. Please reach out to family, friends. Okay. I will also put in the link to this video, other places that you can call for help, other hotlines and things if you don't feel comfortable reaching out to me or any of your family and friends. All right. God bless and thank you very much. Have a great day.